Welcome to the House of Truth. Last week we talked about communicating about communicating wisely. The, the day we're going to talk about keeping wise company, and we're going to look at what makes up wise company, who to pick, who not to pick, how to tell the difference, and why it's so important to not to get this right, to be wise in the company we keep. And we're start. And also we're talk. We're looking at the words of Shlomo, King Solomon again. We're starting here in Proverbs chapter 1, verses 10 through 14. My son, if sinners entice you, consent not. If they say, come with us, let us wait for blood. Let us look privily on the innocent without cause. Love him, swallow him up alive as the grave, and hoe as those that go down to the pit. We shall all find precious substance. We shall fill our house with spoil. Cast a lot among us. Let us all have one purse. So what Solomon's talking about here is a gang. Now, a lot of times people sell themselves gangsters or whatever. And that comes, they're running drugs. And the gangsters that they're referring to ran liquor often during Prohibition. But this is more like the gangs of the Old West, whose primary source of income was just robbing people, looting them, pillaging, that kind of thing. So if someone comes to you and says to you, hey, we're like pirates, perhaps, privateers, not ones connected with a country, but true one. Well, we'll share the booty alike, whatever, huh? But we're gonna do all this violence and stuff to get it, and to steal it from other people, for innocent people who haven't done anything to us, but we just want what they've got. Don't consent you to going with them. Don't take them up on the offer. That's what Solomon's saying. He continues on here in Proverbs chapter 1, verses 15 through 19 with this advice about that. My son, walk not you in the way with them. Refrain your foot from their path, for their feet run to evil, to make haste to shed blood. Surely in vain the net is spread the sight of any bird, and they lay wait for their own blood. They lurk privately for their own lives, or secretly, maybe you say instead of privately. For their own lives. So are the ways of everyone that is greedy of gain, which takes away the life of the owners thereof. Now, this thing here, perhaps the key here to this one here is this business about spraying a net in the side of a bird. People who are fowlers caught fowls before chickens became proliferated. As the main type of bird people ate was chickens. Then, of course, after North America, turkeys as well. But they want to eat, so they catch a grouse thing, and they try to catch them, and they put a net out. But they had to know where the birds were migrating, where they were, and go where the birds were, where they knew they'd be going eventually, but weren't there yet to put the net. Because of the birds saw them putting the net out, they would just walk around it. They would avoid the trap. Yet these people aren't even as smart as a bird, is what Solomon's saying. They've got this plan to get rich by laying in wait for innocent people to rob and perhaps kill them. To get what's theirs, and at the end of the day, they're laying a life for their own. They're laying a trap for their own lives. Their trap will come back on them, and they will end. And they can't even see that they're laying this net that's going to cost them their lives, when they think they're doing it to catch for the lives of others. And the bait is gain. These nets usually had a bait, something in the middle to get the bird to come over to the middle. In Proverbs chapter 4, verses 10 through 19, we read this: Enter not into the path of the wicked, and go not in the way of evil men. Avoid it, pass not by it, turn from it, and pass away. They sleep not except they've done mischief, and their sleep is taken away unless they've caused some to fall. For they eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. But the path of justice shining light that shines more and more into the perfect day. The way of the wicked is darkness. They know not at what they stumble. So, we're not just talking, we're not just talking about, and we're talking about people whose mind is continually on doing evil. It's how they see to get how they get what they want. And, they're bored and restless lest they're doing something that's bad and wicked and causing and doing violence to some other person. I mean, they're up at night and can't even sleep. And then, they end up where they're drunk on wickedness, where it's impaired. I mean, violence. It's got their mind. It's what they can think of, but they're in the dark. They're headed for a fall and can't even see it. They don't really understand what's going on, and they're plotting to bring about their own destruction. We don't want to, so you don't want to enter into their paths. What Solomon says: avoid it, pass it, turn from it, pass away. Get away from them as quickly as you can. Put as much distance between these kind of people and yourself as possible. You don't want their company. The path you want to be on is going to shine more and more to the perfect day, the day Messiah comes. You're going to see things more and more clearly, and to be able to see trouble and avoid it with more and more certainty. But that starts with not getting on their path. So the first principle is people are just out and out gangsters or just out and out criminals. Have nothing to do with them while they're doing this, and do not join them. And stay away from them as much as you can. They're definitely not who you want for company. And for this reason, Solomon is giving us advice, which he tells us here in Proverbs chapter 2, verses 12 through 15. To deliver you from the way of the evil men, of the evil man, from the man that speaks froward things, who leaves the path of unrighteousness to walk in the ways of darkness, who rejoice to do evil and delight in the frowardness of the wicked, whose ways are crooked, and they are froward in their paths. Now I want to draw your attention to verse 13. They leave the paths of righteousness to walk in the ways of the wicked, of darkness. The ones who can leave the paths of uprightness are the ones who are in it in the first place. And you'll often find people in prison when they repent saying, I grew up in a Christian home. I grew up in the church. I knew better to do this. And you talk to them how they get to this point. They let a gang entice them to joining them, or and sometimes intimidate them into joining them. And so they left the path of uprightness to walk in the ways of darkness. That way that Solomon just said your light will get better, brighter and brighter as you go along it. They left that. And what caused them? Notice that it started with the speaking. That man spoke forward things to them. He may have enticed them with what we saw. Those things also may have been threats. Like we own these streets. And if you don't join us, well, or we protect those who join us. And if you're out here, you're not protected. Well, we can't be responsible for if someone jumps you and beats you up or whatever. But if you join us, they won't do it, Regardless, that evil man enticed them either with a threat or with a promise of a promise of gain to leave their way, to leave the way of uprightness. And those who do end up being like them. They rejoice to do evil, and they delight in the forwardness of the wicked. And their ways become crooked, and they also are like that, or that in their paths. So they become as bad, because be careful who your friends are, because you'll become like them. And that's exactly what's happened here. And Solomon is trying to help you prevent that from being ever happening. Not even go there. He's writing us to deliver you from that. And it continues on in Proverbs chapter 2, verses 20, and Proverbs chapter 2 and verse 20 through 22 with these words: that you may walk in the way of good men and keep the paths of righteousness. For the upright shall dwell in the land, and the perfect shall remain in it. But the wicked shall be cut off from the earth, and the transgressors rooted out. So when you're choosing your company, this should be your goal, to walk in the way of good men and keep the paths of righteousness. Why? You're going to dwell in the land, and the perfect, and those whose hearts are perfect towards God are going to remain in it. But the wicked are cut off from the earth, and transgressors are rooted out of it. I mean, first of all, what's all that first one? Like when I was growing up, I grew up with a bunch of people that were just basically thugs and whatever. And by the time I was 25, I could name you personally 10 of them were like I'd gone to school with, worked with, except who had died from drug overdoses and the like, some sort of drug related death. 10 or more who died from alcohol related deaths. Some of them were victims of drunk drivers, but they themselves have been drinking, generally the ones I knew, and perhaps have been driving drunk, so it just came back on them. A drunk driver hit them before they hit someone else, I guess you could say it that way. 10 or more of them committed suicide. All of them were cut off from the earth. They weren't dwelling in the land where we grew up. They weren't dwelling in the land of the living. But others, they didn't get killed, but they were rooted out of it. They were rooted out of the land we were growing in. The feds came in and took them. Like there's a police department. Right, the whole police department went to jail. The police were, most of the police were crooked in this, in this particular town. They were rooted out of that land and sent to another one where the prison was. But those who knew what was right in general and wanted to stay still live there to this day. Those who kept themselves away from all this wickedness, still there. And some of them inherited houses from their parents, grandparents, whatever. I've had the blessing of never having ever had a mortgage. Instead, it's been that money they would have spent on a mortgage and stuff on other things, cars, whatever, huh? Some of them didn't inherit much, but they still got to live. They still got to dwell in the land and remain in it. And that's why Solomon's writing this. You want to pick good company. Well, pick a company that will help you to walk in the paths of righteousness so that you can so you can stay so you can stay in the land and prosper, and, and people will help you stay away from the wicked, not for, keep you from being enticed by them, so you're not cut off from the earth, and you're not rooted out of your land, say to go to prison. In Solomon, to help you do this, gives this advice as well in Proverbs 19:27, chapter 19, verse 27. Cease, my son, to hear the instruction that causes to err from the words of knowledge. Well, the words of knowledge start with, and primarily are the words in the book of truth, the Bible. And this instruction that causes you to err from it is the instruction of these wicked people. And Solomon says, don't even listen to them. You don't know. You don't know. The world will tell you, you got to hear what people have to say. No, you don't. Once, remember we talked about the previous lesson. Once you hear the mouth of foolishness, you hear that foolishness coming out of their mouths. What's the commandment? To walk away from it. And this is similar. It's not you just don't join their gang and join yourself with these people. You don't even listen to them. Again, your goal here is to get away from those who are doing what God says is wicked, and connect with those who are doing what God says is righteous. And there's not one thing here about how cool they are or anything like that, which is just perception anyways, right? Or any of those kind of outward things that you see with your outward eyes. It's about their character. And again, the basic test is, are they trying to move you towards God and doing more of what God says? Or are they trying to move you away from what God says and doing things contrary to it? The words of knowledge. Now, we continue on here about these people you don't want to be around. In Proverbs chapter 6, verses 12 through 15. A naughty person, a wicked man, walks the froward mouth. He winks with his eyes, he speaks with his feet, he teaches with his fingers. Frowardness is in his heart. He devises mischief continually. He sows discord. Therefore, calamity shall come suddenly and shall be broken without remedy. Okay, to clarify here, nice sometimes in English or American English, sometimes we use that in two ways. Sometimes we like their wife was being naughty with them. What they mean often is they were teasing them in some way or something, right? Or something like that. But it's not talking about like a husband and wife teasing each other or something like that. It's talking about naughty, like in the old English sense of wicked, okay? So it's trying to do something contrary to sound judgment in the law of the land. In particular, somebody's going against the law of the land. And notice again with the mouth here. He goes places with a froward mouth. He goes places and gives these speeches to try to stir up discord and everything. And he winks with his eyes, and not as he speaks, but perhaps he's got some entertaining aspect about him. Teaches with his fingers. Maybe puts his hand with his fingers or whatever, puts his hands on people and empathizes with them. Makes them feel warm fuzzies. Or whatever kind of, as people would say out here, warm fuzz. And does these kind of things, and he's fun. And he's just generally fun to be around. But it's all a front for his purposes. This wickedness that's in his heart, because he's devising mischief continually. And he's sowing discord, and we'll talk about this discord in a little more detail in a moment here. But in the end, it's not going to work out for him. He may be successful for a while, but the day will come when his calamity is going to come on him suddenly. And suddenly he's going to be broken without remedy. Now, of course, you know, for the a famous example, that would be like Adolf Hitler. Shortly, in a short amount of time, the whole thing fell apart. Of course, the war had been going on for a while, but at a certain point, it was over. And it was just a matter of time, you know. And there was no escape for this guy. And he ended up killing himself, but if he hadn't, he'd been killed. He may or may not have made it to trial if he hadn't been hung. But his calamity came on him suddenly. Or Saddam Hussein in more modern times. But Hitler's perhaps a better example, as you'll see what we're talking about here. We're continuing on Proverbs chapter 9, in verses 10 through 9 through 10. He that walks upright walks surely. He that perverts his way shall be known. He that winks with an eye causes sorrow, but a prating fool shall fall. So we're going to go back with our Hitler example. You know, there's probably some others, but he exemplifies it so well. First of all, he that walks uprightly walks surely. Those people, even though they perhaps went through a lot of trouble, who wouldn't go along with his program, maybe had to leave Germany, whatever the case was, they walked surely. They're you know, at the end, they're still alive, their descendants are alive, except he's been cut off the face of the earth, and his descendants as well. I mean, if we didn't have any that we know of. Fact is, he perverted his ways, and is known for that. He may have told. Oh gosh, the space the guy's name. The Prime Minister of England. Oh no, we're all peaceful and everything, but his ways became known. It came out what he was doing. Yeah, he winked in his eyes and made German people feel good, but he just caused them sorrow in the end. 1/3 of them dead by the end of World War II. 20 million Germans dead. All their cities destroyed and in rubble. Because they were parading fools and they fell. Parading is just kind of you're dancing, you're just dancing along through life, not paying attention to what's really going on. I tell these people, even after he died, and all cause of this thing, like, well, man, their life was never as good as it was under Hitler. They're just too stupid to see that it was only good temporarily. That all they're looking at is the bait that was in the net and ignoring the net in the end result. I mean, those people can't even learn the hard way. But a lot of people who follow them were foolish, not paying attention, just knowing they're having, you know, he gave great speeches, they liked the rallies, he made them feel good about being German, except blah, blah, blah. And they fell to rise no more. And here's these people in particular, this discord is about this in particular. Proverbs 24 is spelled out in Proverbs 20, chapter 44, verse 21 through 22. My son, fear the Lord and the king, meddle not with him given to change. For a calamity shall rise suddenly, and who knows the ruin of them both? Okay, when it's about giving the change, it's not talking about like Thomas Edison making inventions or changing the way you do things at work, you know, stay with the times, innovation. It's not talking about that. It's about those who changing the king, changing who's in charge, the rule of the Lord and the king. And ultimately these people want to be in charge themselves, like Hitler. And they want to bring out sweeping change. And they don't want to obey the laws of God. or the king. And so that's why they're sowing discord. They're out there trying to get people riled up in rebellion, not because there's an injustice being done by the king, and then there's never one done by the Lord, but they don't like living under their rule. And like Lucifer, they want to be in charge themselves. What's going to happen? Their calamity is going to come on them, is going to rise up suddenly. They maybe look like they're winning, they may be expanding territory, growing like the Nazis did with the Blitzkrieg. Then one day there's a battle that doesn't go their way, and it's all downhill from there. And it comes up, it's just suddenly. And they come to ruin. So Solomon says, don't meddle with them. I want you to notice this, meddle with them. I mean, it means don't even having to do with them at all. You know, they're not they just not to be your friends. They're not even to be your associates. The people in that outer ring of your, with your closest friends in the inner circle, and so on and so forth. They're not being your inner circle, not being your outer circle. They're not being that circle of people you associate with casually. Have nothing to do with those who are doing this. And our country today is full of these people. They say, they'll use terms like, well, we're progressive. We're trying to progress the U.S. They're trying to progress it to hell. Okay. Yeah, they're progressing towards hell where they're headed. They're ultimately do not fear the Lord. And they don't fear the king. There are people in the U.S. right now who would like to get rid of our entire system. And they have more of a communist system, something, of course, with them in charge. And, so they can do all this wickedness. Those who are out there promoting things God says, thou shalt not do, like homosexuality, do not fear the Lord. And you cannot be their buddies. You cannot even be their associates. You can't even casually work bipartisan with them. You're not to meddle with them. You're to have as little to do with them as humanly possible, is what Solomon tells you to do. They are not wise company. We need to be keeping wise company. And like these people is another group that we're going to talk about now. We need to avoid, if we're going to keep wise company, we got to put these people in the foolish category. He is void of understanding, of wisdom. We're in Proverbs chapter 11, verses 12 and 13. He is void of wisdom, despises neighbor, but a man of understanding upholds his peace. A talebearer reveals secrets. But he's a faithful spirit conceals the matter. Okay, now what drives this person? What drives this behavior, despising their neighbor? Which can be they're envious of what they got and want what they have, but it also means they just don't like them. And if you're godly, it's probably not first. They don't like you because you're godly. You turn away from God and you'll be all fine with them. But they despise their neighbor and they're out there trying to stir up trouble. The man of understanding is not going to be doing that. And how are they going to serve? A talebearer is going to reveal secrets, and a talebearer is just somebody. Some people might say a gossip. Somebody goes around talking about other people all the time. Small minds talk about people. Larger minds talk about things. Great minds talk about ideals. These are small-minded people. They talk about other people. They reveal secrets. And they learn about someone else. They're looking for an opportunity to bring that something maybe should be kept under wraps. They're looking for an opportunity, or they heard it somehow, or maybe somebody even just told them, or they saw it. They're going to reveal that. But some of the faithful spirits going to conceal the matter. And an example of that is, I used to go to a congregation, and they had one of these 12-step programs. And I didn't know much. I mean, it didn't apply to me at all. But people kept coming to me and telling me their deepest, darkest secrets, which I never told anyone. I mean, I'm not going to share them with you today either. But they kept coming to me. I'm like, my wife, why do they keep coming to me? Because one of their steps was, yeah, tell me they're a human being about, your worst things you did, whatever. Well, after it became obvious I had a faithful spirit and wasn't going to conceal the matter, keep it to myself, word got out, and they was all like, go tell him, huh? Because they understood. But a talebearer wouldn't do that. He's got to talk about people. He's got to talk about everything he knows, and just can't wait to get out that juicy gossip. Has got to tell people about it. Now in Proverbs 20 verses 19 to verse 20, chapter 20 verse 19, Solomon says this about it. He that goes about talebearers reveals secrets. They're not meddle with him that flatters with his lips. As I already mentioned, the talebearer reveals secrets. They'll also flatter you, and often it's to try to get, secrets from you, information from you. But like the person trying to overthrow the government, have nothing to do with them. You don't even want them on your outer circle. You want to avoid them as much as humanly possible. And I want to explain flattery. Remember this we talked about the people who know their God. Antiochus Epiphanes rose to power through flattery. Remember, he was a usurper and he wasn't a legitimate guy, but he flattered the right people. The difference between flattery and praise is this: praise is built on something you're commending someone for something that's true. Flattery, it's not true. Example: a guy, maybe I have a couple of coworkers who I've been told to supervise in some manner. I both give them some tasks to do, and one of them does a great job, and I tell him, "Great job, that was awesome, man! You're the best I've worked with this you've done the best job I've seen this in a while," and it's all true. That's praise. But that's the other guy. He's done a lousy job. In fact, the worst job I've seen in a while. But maybe he's the boss's son or something like that, huh? For some reason, or maybe I think he can help. Maybe a man who's not married this guy maybe has a sister he's interested in. And he wants to. Maybe he thinks this guy can get in good with this guy and get him good with a sister or something, right? So he's like, "Oh man, you didn't." Even though he knows he's got to go clean up behind this guy and straighten out the mess he made. And the guy who did it also knows he did a lousy job. But nonetheless, he tells him, "Man, you are so talented. You did that so well." Accept. And, perhaps put on his sincere voice, pats him on, put his hand on his hand, all that stuff we talked about, all that stuff to try to manipulate him. When someone's trying to manipulate someone, what if you want to manipulate somebody, what you want to do is you're trying to get their mind. You're trying to move them out of the realm of facts and logic and move them into the realm of emotions and feelings. Okay, and that's what the flatterer is trying to do. Okay, the facts and logic say you did a lousy job, and you need to redo it. As a matter of fact, and if you need help to understand what to do, I'll show you or whatever. But you need to redo it. But the flatterer is not worried about facts and emotion. He's trying to get people into the realm and appeal. Facts and logic. I'm sorry. He's trying to get them into the realm of feelings and emotions. So they're not thinking clearly. So they can't see that he's really after something else. In Proverbs chapter 26, 22, we read this about the talebearer. Where there is no wood, where no wood is, there the fire goes out. So there's no talebearer, the strife ceases. As coals are to burning coals, and wood to fire, so is a contentious man to kindle strife. The wounds of a talebearer, the words of a talebearer are as wounds, and they go down to the middle part, the innermost parts of the belly. Okay, so Solomon said you gotta get rid of this guy out of your life. He's kindling strife, compares it to a fire. Contentious. He isn't happy. He isn't content with what he has in life, and he don't want you to be content either. He don't want everyone else to be content. And he's going around using these words, trying to cause discord. And notice his words are hurtful words. It wasn't anybody go down the innermost part of the belly. It's not talking about your body. It's talking about your innermost being. Now, in America, there's a saying people have, and they have it, and the saying is wrong and backwards. It goes, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. But the truth is, sticks and stones may break your bones, but words can really hurt you. This talebearer can do damage to your reputation, can say words that really hurt you, that maybe they're true, but maybe they're not even true. And you break a bone, they put a cast on it, except maybe 6 months, a year, whatever it takes. That bone's healed up and it's stronger than it was. But you can wound someone for life with your words. And that's what a talebearer does. And Solomon says, get them out of your life. Do whatever you got to separate yourself from them. You're never going to be peace as long as they're around. You know, if you say you're in their house, find a way to leave and live somewhere else. If they're in your house, put them out. You may have to change jobs. I mean, it just depends on what the situation is. But whatever you have to do, you're gonna have no peace because this person's continually stirring up strife. You've got to get them out of your life. The talebearers, not only do you got to not meddle with them like just like someone trying to overthrow the government. If they are in your life somehow, you've got to get them out of your life. That's the only way you're going to stop the damage they're doing. They are bad. They are not wise company. That is foolish company to keep coming with a talebearer. Now look some more. Solomon says about this foolish company. Remember, he's giving us advice to tell us how to avoid them and have good company, wise company. That's going to we want to avoid the foolish company and have wise company. People that's going to help us stay on God's path and prosper, not ones who's going to lead us into trouble and destruction. Well, there's another characteristics of that type we need to avoid. An ungodly man, and this is in Proverbs chapter 16, verse 27 through 30. An ungodly man digs up evil. In his lips there is a burning fire. A froward man sows strife, and a whisper separates chief friends. A violent man entices his neighbor and leads him into the way that is not good. He shuts his eyes to devise froward things. Moving his lips, he brings evil to pass. Okay, first of all, I want you to notice how much this is done with this man's mouth. How much of it's about speaking. I mean, his lips, there is a burning fire. He's saying words to stir up people's passions. He's sowing strife with his words. And he'll pull someone aside and whisper things that may or may not be true, revealing secrets or maybe just making stuff up. with a goal of separating chief friends. That's like, say, besties, people would say today, or best friends forever, or whatever. And the reason we'll separate them usually because he perceives one of them's not going to go along with his program. One of them is going to keep the other one from joining him. He's enticing his neighbor with his words. And he's going to lead him with those words in a way that's not good, like Hitler did. He led the German people in a way that wasn't good. And he's moving his lips. He's doing it to bring evil to pass. He's giving speeches to bring up evil. Notice he digs up evil. If there's nothing bad going on, he's gonna dig something up. He's gonna find. He's gonna be digging. People say sometimes they use that expression "digging up." They're talking about like digging up a news story, digging down, finding, getting some. He's looking for something to cause strife and contention, and perhaps like Hitler's case, for the purpose of overthrowing the government. He's looking for something. He's digging for it. He's digging up evil. He's creating evil where there is no evil. There ain't a problem. He's going to make one. He'll shut his eyes, like we'll do, to shut their eyes to sometimes think or imagine. And what for? To devise wicked things. But again, listening to the contents of the words, not letting them move you out of the realm of facts and logic and into the realm of feelings and emotions. So you actually focus on their words and what their words say and what they're trying to accomplish. You see if they're a talebearer, etc. It's key because that's their primary way to accomplish the evil they want. And here's another reason people join them sometimes. We're told to look out for. Be you not envious against evil men, your desire to be with them. For their heart says destructions, and their lips talk of mischief. Okay, how can you identify them? Their lips are talking of mischief. Their heart's saying destruction. They're always looking for some way to destroy something or somebody. And we're not to be envious against them. We are not to desire. Psalm says, don't desire to be with these people. And unfortunately, I've known so many believers who've done this, where they meet on the Sabbath or on Sunday. They're all like, but first of all, I got the fear of man. Well, they got all the power, except I'm sorry, no, they don't. God has all power. They got these people convinced they have all the power. When in reality, God can stop every one of them's heartbeat in a moment if he wants to. Their breath is in his hands. But they can't see that. They're envious. They're envious against them. And they want to be with them. And this is how Hitler recruited a bunch of people. They desired to be with him because they saw he had power. He did, but it was temporary. Gained wealth. Well, he did, but it was temporary. What was the end of it? They wanted to be with him. And it's true today about people. And God lets the wicked rise up and stuff to accomplish his will, as we talked about, like when we talked about the people know their God, how he did this with like Alexander the Great. And as soon as Alexander the Great accomplished his will, he was gone. God gave him success till Alexander the Great did what God wanted done. Then he was gone. And that's the way these people, that's the way it is with these people. So we're not to envy them or desire to be with them, or we'll be swept up too. And we don't want, we don't want to be with them because of this right here in Proverbs chapter 29, verse 24. He who is partnered with a thief hates his own soul. hears cursing and berates it not. Means he doesn't consider, he doesn't pay attention to it. He hears that partnering with this guy is going to bring destruction to him, but he doesn't consider it, doesn't pay attention to it. Ends up partnering with the guy, but he hates his own soul. It's going to bring him destruction. He's like, yeah, but I do that. I have this car and all this money and, you know, all this influence and other people and power and respect and blah, blah, blah. But like the bird, that's the seed. That's the bait. But the net's going to catch you. And you ultimately hate your own soul, just like someone laid a trap out for themselves. So don't be envious of what they have, and don't take the bait, because if you take the bait to get what they have now, you're going to end up with death that they get later. Don't take the bait. Destruction is the end of it. If you become their partner, you hate your own soul. You are your own worst enemy. They are not wise company. But here is some wise company. In Proverbs chapter 17, verse 17. Solomon's going to tell us how to identify some wise company. It's mostly, he told us we need to get wise company, but mostly he's told us what the foolish company looks like so far, who not to associate with. But here's the thing to look for, people that you do want to associate with. A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. A friend loves you at all times. A real friend, even if you get stupid, go off and do stuff, and even they have to separate themselves for these reasons we discussed. A real friend still loves you. They're praying for you. They're waiting for you to come to your senses, like the father was of the prodigal son, out looking for him daily. They love you even when you do them wrong. And their love is genuine and sincere. It's not, if they say something good to you, if they say something good about you, you can take it to the bank. It's praise, not flattery. And a brother is born for adversity, and sometimes a friend is like a brother, or a friend can even be closer to a brother, a physical brother, that is to say. He's born for adversity. He's born to be there. He's born to be there in those hard times for you. I mean, it's one thing to avoid all the foolish company, but you still need friends. You still need company. And someone that's a brother to you is someone that stands with you in hard times. Even if you brought them on yourself, it will help you get back on your feet if you'll let them. Now, if they're wise, they still got to avoid you while you're doing all that stuff. But like the prodigal son, when he came home, he stopped doing this. He stopped living as right as living. And they will help you get back on your feet if you will turn to the right way. That's a true friend. Someone that's a friend to you like a brother. And here's the number one way you can detect them. In Proverbs chapter 27, verses 5 through 6. Open rebuke is better than secret love. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. When that kisses of an enemy being deceitful reminds me of Judas. Master. But he at the end wasn't a friend of Jesus at all, Yeshua. Yeshua called him friend. He was you know, what doeth you, friend? He loved him at all times. He was betraying him. But Judas was an enemy at the end. It was deceitful. He wasn't given. He wasn't. That sign of greeting and affection was a sign of who they were looking for. It was a sign of betrayal. So someone's not really your friend may say things that make you feel. Look, if someone only says things that make you feel good all the time, someone's always trying to get you in that realm of feeling and emotion and out of that realm of facts and logic, you can be assured they're not a true friend. That's deceitful. Because a true friend will wound you sometimes, say things that are hard to say, but they do it because they love you. And their rebuke is open. And it might mean that could mean in front of other people if necessary. But it's better than secret love. Well, they love you, but they won't say anything to you. They'll let you go on down the road to destruction rather than possibly offend you. As I say, hurt your feelings and get you mad at them or something. A real friend knows when to sit down next to you, put their hand across on your shoulder, and quietly sit with you and be there for you. But they also know when to give you a swift kick in the seat of the pants. To do something that hurts you, to keep you from being hurt more later. In fact, Yeshua said, if you see someone sin, go to them and confront them about it. Not secret love and open rebuke. The Torah says, it makes it even plainer. It says, if you shall no wise hate your brother, you see him sin, you shall rebuke him. That's how you know if you've got a true friend. I mean, that's the first sign before you ever get in that trouble, the time of adversity, how you know who to run to. Now you'll find out the time of adversity. So it's not a true friend will turn you away. But you need to think, who's out there telling me the truth, even when it hurts? It's trying to keep me out of trouble, even when I gotta say hurtful words. As I'm stressing the truth, not saying hurtful words to you that aren't true, like a talebearer. But they're trying to do this to keep you out of trouble, and they're rebuking you, and they're not being quiet about it. They're not keeping it. It's not secret love. And they're not just telling you things that make you feel good all the time, because that's deceitful. Because you aren't perfect, and anyone that acts like you are is deceitful, and is treating you like you are is deceitful. Look for a true friend. That is absolutely the wisest company of all. Okay. Now, let's continue on in Proverbs 20, chapter 27, down verses 8 through 10. As a bird wanders from her nest, so is a man that wanders from his place. Ointment and perfume rejoice the heart, so is the sweetness of a man's friend by his hearty counsel. Your own friend and your father's friend forsake not, neither go to your brother's house in the day of your calamity. For better is a neighbor that is near than a brother far off. Okay, we're going to start at the end there for a moment, just to clarify. So it's not like your brother's way off. Like, I got a brother who's 17-hour drive from where I live. Disaster happens, calamity. I mean, if it's some sort of disaster that's affecting, like I said, the whole nation, I may not even be able to get there in 17 hours. There may be, flooding, damage, roads get rerouted, whatever, traffic jams, or just whatever, some sort of, you can't fly because of planes being grounded like 9/11. Running off to him for calamity is not very practical. That's why it says don't go into your brother's house. And your brother, just because he's your physical brother, doesn't mean he's really got your best interest. A real brother is someone who was there for the day of adversity. And that's who it's talking about, not to forsake. And your father's friend. If your father has a friend like that, he'll take you in for your father's sake and help you out. So once this bird wandered from her nest, well, a nest is a bird's home, and a lot of times it's a relatively safe place. Some small birds build nests on virtually twigs, like a hummingbird, kind of like a hummingbird size or something. And not even birds are large to be predators to it. Can't even go there because where their nest is won't support their weight, and they know it, so they can't land there. But that bird get away from that nest, particularly a young bird, let's say a baby bird that can't fly yet, not so small it can't get around at all, but it can't fly and has to hop around. It no longer has a place of safety. And calamity comes, it has nowhere to go back to. It's just, if a predator comes upon it, it's gone. I mean, it can't fly off. It can't go to a place of safety. And that's like when a man is that wanders from his place. A man that doesn't stay near his close friends. Once you find wise company, you have to keep it. You have to stay in it. You can't just be there, show up when problems come and be their friend. You need to be their friend all the time. And the reason is your friends like it's your friend's going to give a good friend's going to give you hearty counsel. He's going to give you good advice. He or she's going to give you good advice to keep on that path Solomon said you need to be on. That path that wise company helps you stay on. That keeps you in the land. It helps you to prosper. It helps everything in your life to be better. And keeps you out of trouble. And keeps you from that destruction of being on the path of the foolish. A foolish company will bring you into the path that leads to trouble and destruction. And those that rejoice the heart, because they're out looking out for you, and they got your back, and they're looking out for your long-term good. If you're wise and have wise company, you're not going to get offended at them so easily. Yeah, what they said may be hurtful, but first question to ask yourself is it true? And if they're wise, and there may be a misunderstanding, but maybe it's true. If you don't think it's true, if you're talking about a real friend here, you can discuss it with them, get some clarity. Maybe they misunderstood something, and if they do, you need to have grace with them because you also have misunderstood things. But you need to keep that. You need to find that wise company, that good friend, and cultivate that relationship. So when the day comes, and part of that is when the day comes, they'll be there for you, but you also are there for them because if you want wise company and a good friend, you've got to learn to be a good friend as well. And when it's their day of calamity, you've got to be the one to step up and help them. Otherwise, you're like a bird that wandered from her nest, and you have no place of safety to go to return to, a place where you're safe and secure, particularly when calamity. I mean, a bird, one thing they'll do in their nest sometimes is that some of them have nests that are enclosed, and they can go in there, and when a storm hits, so they don't, so they're not getting all wet and maybe drowned or whatever. You're not going to have that place if you don't cultivate some friendships. So if you want a good friend, be a good friend. Now, in Proverbs chapter 19, verse 19, we read, but you got to watch this friendship thing because here's where you can get in trouble with it. You gotta be discerning that someone may be a good friend to you, but you may be able to rely on them, but it's not the only thing to consider. And here's one thing you've really got to watch out for. A man of great wrath shall suffer punishment. For if you deliver him, you must do it again. If you have a good friend and they got anger problems, and they're always getting in trouble, their anger is always getting them in trouble. I mean, if you're going to deliver them, you might as well make them a room in your house. Because they're going to just keep getting in trouble. Why? Because they've not dealt with the problem that's causing their behavior. People are angry; they'll do things they regret later. They really are sorry. They didn't really mean to do it, but their anger takes over and they can't think straight. And the result is they're punished for their actions. And my father-in-law, when he was younger, was a great example. He was in the army. He joined the army during World War II. Patriotic, like a lot of people. With the Army Corps of Engineers. Of course, when you go in as an enlisted man like he did, you're a slick sleeve private. You have no stripes. He left a slick sleeve private. Now, considering his job, the somewhat high mortality rate among his peers, except he should have been coming out a sergeant, staff sergeant, maybe even tech sergeant would have been possible in those circumstances, or whatever the equivalent back then was called. Several got promoted even to officer rank from the lower ranks on the field, for some particular, exceptional act of bravery or something. But he came back out a slick sleeve. He left a slick sleeve private also after, I think it was 3.5 years or whatever it was he was in. He went to the end of the war. And why? He kept being punished. He kept being punished. He had a problem with authority, with authority people telling him what to do. Why? Because he was angry inside all the time before he ever joined the army. And he was angry over injustice done to him. And there is no doubt that injustices were done to him. From his parents on. I mean, as far as having a good reason to be angry, he had a good reason to be angry. But you can't just live in anger like that. It'll eat you up. And it just tears on you all the time. It's just always there. I'm speaking from experience here, by the way. And it'll cause you to do things you regret, and you'll end up, suffering, and you'll end up being punished for those things, like he was. So if you deliver a guy like that, you're just going to keep doing it till he takes care of the anger problem. So Proverbs 22:24 it gives you this advice about someone like that. Again, chapter 22, I should say, verse 24 through 25. Make no friendship with an angry man, or with a furious man you shall not go, lest you learn his ways and get a snare to your soul. And there's the problem. If you make that guy a room, it's one of the problems. His anger is going to become your anger. You can't be hanging around someone like this. You can't be close friends with them. You might be able to be a casual associate maybe gives them some wise advice because you do care about them. Try to help them get somewhere to get some help for their anger, but you cannot be hanging around these people. They cannot be in your circle of company. Because if you do, their anger is going to become your anger. You're going to end up being the one being, but you're going to end up also being caught up in their anger and doing things that get you in trouble. And it's a snare to you. Particularly if they really have a right to be angry, like my father-in-law. You may sympathize with them. You may empathize. And then you might start acting with them. So you cannot be friends with an angry man if you want to keep wise company. You cannot be friends with a furious man. They've got you. Best you can do is pray for them. Perhaps point to someone that can help them with their anger issues. Maybe even let them know, hey, I'd really like to be your friend, but I cannot, but this anger is keeping us from being friends. But you cannot have them in your life, because if you do, you're going to learn, that anger is going to rub off on you. And I don't care who you are, there's no exceptions to this rule. It's in the Word of God. In verse 29, 22 through 20, chapter 20, Proverbs chapter 29, verse 22 through 23, we read this morning about the angry man. An angry man stirs up strife, and a furious man abounds in transgression. A man's pride shall bring him low, but honor upholds the humble in spirit. Now, I want to say this to clarify. It doesn't mean if you're around any of your friends, they get angry, you got to quit being friends with them. There is a righteous anger. There is a time for anger, and anger is only moves people to action often. Yeshua, Jesus, the money changers made him angry. I mean, it flat out tells us this in the Bible. And then there's God himself, the whole wrath of God business. Okay? But, he drove them out. Once they're out, the anger was over. He didn't hold on to the anger. And that's perhaps the big difference here, okay? But a man who just hangs on to that anger all the time is going to stir up strife. He's going to be looking. He's going to get other people angry. And maybe whatever injustice was done to him, maybe it was done to them, but by one of the other people in the group. You got a little group here, and now maybe they've all resolved the issue. Maybe they made a restitution, made everything right, but now he's bringing it back up again, stirring it back up, like that fire we talked about with the talebearer. And now people are fighting. And a furious man abounds in transgression. He'll do things that are sinful or transgressing God's law, because the anger will drive him to it. Things he wouldn't do otherwise. My father used to lose his temper terribly, abuse me at times, and told me he was sorry afterwards. And people are like, well, if he was sorry, I wouldn't have done it. No, it does not work that way. I inherited that same characteristic, and the Lord had to help me overcome it. I believed him when he said sorry, because I understood when I lost my temper and did things I would normally do, I really was sorry afterwards I'd done them. The anger has gained control of them. It's kind of like that character, the Incredible Hulk, where what is the guy's name? Bruce Banner or what? No, Bruce Banner's not. Dr. Banner, anyway, whatever his name is. He gets angry and he becomes this monster, goes around smashing things, and then when it's all over, he looks around and regrets like, what have I done, and regrets it. Anger will cause you to commit sins you wouldn't commit otherwise. You have moved out of the realm of facts and logic and into the realm of feeling and emotions. And that emotion you feel is anger. That the furious man. And sometimes that anger is driven by, like, my father-in-law, even my father, and perhaps in my case as well, where some injustice had been done to me. But sometimes it's just pride. Someone hurt someone's pride. And because their pride's hurt, they end up doing something in anger they wouldn't otherwise do that they later regret, and they're brought low. They find themselves laying low, trying not to get anyone to notice them because they're concerned about the consequences of what they did. Or people thought highly of them until they did that. And what drove their anger? Their pride. So yelling people are humble in spirit. And humble, again, in the context of the Bible, doesn't generally mean letting people just walk over you or whatever. It means primarily humble before God, obeying God, not thinking you're smarter than him. I got a better way. Just if he says do it this way, you just do it that way. And, also would apply, of course, perhaps to your boss. And the fact is, your boss may tell you to do something and you may know it's wrong. You may know it's not going to come out well. It's okay for you to say something if you're good, if you're faithful to them, depending on your boss. But once, if they insist, you need to go ahead and do it. I mean, if I'm not talking about something criminal, I'm just talking about something that's not going to come out with good results here, okay? If it's criminal, of course, you're not to go along with it. But sometimes the boss can't get it till he tries it. We're all that way. Sometimes you just got to try something out before you, or perhaps they even got an idea it's not going to work out, but they want to know why it doesn't work out. So they want you to do it anyway so they can try to study out what the problem is. Whatever the case is, don't be arguing with them. Just do it. And don't get mad that they didn't listen to you. You just need to be doing it. Because you get mad because they didn't listen to you, that's pride. And I see this, unfortunately, in people who meet on the Sabbath all the time, particularly. Other people too, but them in particular. There's something they see in God's word. It took them 10 years to get there. From when they first noticed it to when they got convinced and started acting on it. They tell someone else, and they're angry that they didn't just get there in 10 minutes. What are they really angry about? Their pride. That's what it really is. You didn't listen to me. You didn't believe me, is what it really is driving it. It causes them to abound in transgression. Don't be that person. If it took you a long, if it took you a while, if God took a long process to get you to where you are, it's going to take a long process for other people. Pride alone will keep you from having grace with people. Have grace, be humble, and drop the pride. I don't know who it's for, but it's for somebody. Okay, now we're going to wrap up here and look at one more group we absolutely got to avoid if we're going to keep wise company. And this is addressed here in Proverbs chapter 23, verses 20 through 21. Be not among wine bibbers, among riotous eaters of flesh. For the drunkard and glutton shall come to poverty, and drowsiness shall clothe a man with rags. Okay, first of all, I'm going to explain wine bibbers. That was people who went somewhere and drank wine with the intention of getting drunk, and perhaps it was a fancy dinner party, would wear a bib, a piece of cloth covering their nice clothes, So when they spilt wine after they had too much, it wouldn't ruin their nice clothes. That's where the term wine bibber comes from. So you're not talking about like Yeshua at the Last Supper, where he poured a glass of wine and passed it around himself and 12 other men. Where when it's all done, they took 3 sips. Well, Judas took 2, and the others took, okay. We're talking about people. They're having a feast of some sort, dinner party. Glutton, notice, greedy gut, riotous eaters of flesh. I mean, they're not just having there to eat, but they got the intention. They got the intention of that's part of the whole party package. We're gonna eat too much, and you're perhaps get involved in some sort of sexual immorality and drunkenness in the whole bit. Don't be among them. You're invited to that dinner party, do not go. I don't care if your boss invited you. Don't go. Because in the end, it's going to bring people to poverty. Drinking and overeating will bring you to poverty. And the drowsiness that comes from drinking too much and eating too much. Man, it'll make you tired. You don't feel like doing anything. And even though you were worried about those nice clothes when you put that wine bib on, actually maybe you do spill stuff on it, but beyond that, you develop a lifestyle that brings you to poverty, and now you're clothed with rags. And part of that's because you weren't working when you should have been because you were drowsy from that lifestyle. But Solomon's advice is don't even go there. Don't be among them. When they're doing that, don't be around them at all. In Shaul, the Apostle Paul echoes this and expounds upon a little bit more here for us in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 9 through 11. I wrote you an epistle not to company with fornicators. Yet not altogether the fornicators of this world with covetous extortioners or idolaters. For then you must needs go out of the world. I have written you not to keep company if any man that is called a brother be a fornicator or a covetous or an idolater or a railer or a drunkard or an extortioner. With such a one, do not eat. Not to eat. Solomon says, don't keep company with them at all. Don't go to their party. Don't even eat with these guys. Now, well, I want you to notice he's clarifying here. You can go and eat with a fornicator that's not a believer. Jesus was a friend of sinners. You can be a friend with them. Try to turn them away from that. Notice a man and a brother, and that's kind of intentional. Could be a woman and a sister. But you can keep some company with these people if they're not believers. You can keep some company with the covetous if they're not believers. Idolaters, if they're not out there trying to mix idolatry with the following Messiah, okay. I mean, we're talking about straight up idolaters. Like I've got friends who are Hindus. I can do that. Friend of sinners, right? Like Yeshua. Of course, who else did he have? All of sin fell short of the glory of God. Even extortioners. Someone who's mistreating other people, like taking advantage of people who are in desperate situations to get as much money out of them as possible. You can be friends with them, try to get them to come out of their way. You can't join them in their enterprise, as we saw earlier. But notice who he singles out for not just brothers. That's not listed as people of this world. Railers and drunkards. A railer against someone that's railing is someone speaking against the government in particular. Someone who's discontent with the government, always speaking evil of it, and the people and the rulers. Even though the Torah says you shall not speak evil of your rulers. I mean, Shaul himself quoted that when the guy didn't know his high priest was high priest. You cannot keep company with them, whether believers or not, in a drunkard. You cannot keep company with drunkards. And this is a problem I've seen in so many congregations. They have like one of these 12-step programs, like what I said. And the trouble and what I've seen happen is some guy or girl in there will be like, well, I came in there week after week. Well, I fell off the wagon, blah, blah, blah. They're still a drunkard. In fact, they're out there confessing it. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Not I'm a new creation made new in Christ Jesus. Old things are passed away. All things are new. They're confessing they're still a drunkard. And we're told not to keep, if someone's a drunkard, not to so much as eat with them. Well, what happens is someone that's not been a drunkard, who's left all that, ends up hanging around and becoming a drunkard. You cannot keep a drunkard in your company any more than you keep someone who's a railer, particularly someone trying to overthrow the government. You don't even eat with them. You've got to keep away from them completely if you want to keep wise company. And here's the bottom line on wise company, why it's so important to keep wise company. First Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33. Be not deceived, evil communications corrupt good manners. Now, some more modern translations say it accurate. I mean, this is accurate from when it's written, but perhaps a little just accurate and a little perhaps better to understand today's English. Bad company destroys good morals. Or destroys good character. Do not be deceived. You are not going to help these people out by running around with them doing what they're doing. You've got to have good company. You have to keep wise company. Otherwise, it's like a pastor of mine a long time ago. He was on a stage, and another guy at the bottom of the stage. And he asked everyone, says, which is easier, me to pull him up onto the stage with me or him to pull me down to the floor with him? You never really help anybody unless you keep wise company. They're going to pull you down to the floor with them. You're not going to pull them up on the stage with you. The pull of this world, as long as we're in this world, is downward. And if you think otherwise, you are being deceived. You can pray for people who are like that. Even you can even be a friend to them in your heart, but keep yourself separated from them until they repent. Like the prodigal son had to leave the father's house because his father wasn't going to put up with that behavior. And he knew it. That's why he had to go to a far country. Father still loved him, looking for him. You can be a real friend to him, but you can't keep company with him. You can't keep company with them until like the prodigal son, they've decided they've suffered enough and they're turning from that wickedness. And when they're sincere, then you can help them turn from it. But they have to decide it themselves first. You can pray for them. You can write them letters. You can try to influence them. You can say things to them that are hurtful but true to help them. But you cannot hang around them. You cannot you cannot stay wise yourself unless you keep wise company. And that means avoiding all this foolish company we've talked about. That's all I have for this week. Until next week, shalom.